are talking about the movie Cold Skin, which was directed by Xavier Gens, and he actually was the man behind the original 2007 Hitman movie and recently directed the horror movie Crucifixion. And this one stars one-time Punisher Ray Stevenson. Now the story isn't really a horror film, or at least I would say it doesn't really feel much like a horror film, although it kind of has the trappings of one when you're going to talk about it. It's more an action film, I would say, than anything else. So it focuses on this character, simply called Friend in the movie. His name is never said, and he's this guy sent to this remote island to basically study weather patterns. And whilst he is there, there is another person at this island who basically seems to be controlling the lighthouse. Once he's dropped off there, he actually finds out this island gets routinely attacked by this kind of group of mer-men who savagely kind of try and get into the buildings and stuff like that. So he has to team up with Ray Stevenson's character, who is the lighthouse keeper, to try and defend themselves against these waves and waves of attacks from these kind of like mer creatures. And now Ray Stevenson's character has got almost like domesticated on this female one here that he kind of treats essentially like a dog, and ultimately it's a kind of the story of these sort of three characters and their interactions, and ultimately can they survive these kind of various attacks of these kind of mer creatures. So what do we think about Cold Skin? I'm going to say this movie looks fantastic. It was actually filmed off the coast of Lanzarote and the Canary Islands, so the actual scenery and the location shooting looks really beautiful, and you really do get that very kind of remote yet very kind of fantastic looking kind of scenery here on these kind of windswept rocky beaches. It looks great, so I've got to say, and the cinematography here along with that looks absolutely fantastic as well. The creature effects, I have to say, are all pretty damn good. They're kind of, they look like a little bit like Ape Sapien from the Hellboy series. I mean, I don't want to call them mermaids exactly, because they're not like half fish. They're kind of more aquatic humanoids, I would say. But the makeup looks pretty good. There are a few instances where we kind of see CGI when they're kind of running along, for example. But for the most part, they're all kind of done with kind of practical effects. I do feel the effects here look pretty damn good. The acting here also is absolutely fine for all the cast involved here. It's a kind of a slow-moving film, and there's lots of kind of like you know, interactions really between these kind of two men that make up the kind of the bulk of the running time here. But and I feel the character work done by both actors is all pretty solid. Are there any kind of negatives for me? I've got to say the negatives are relatively minor for this film. I would say the film does lag in certain areas because you have a relatively small cast. It kind of feels like it just lags here and there, and maybe it just spends a little bit too much time where you kind of want to see the kind of the plot kind of like move on. And the other thing I would say is I feel the kind of the motivation, shall we say, for both the human characters and the sort of aquatic creatures are a little lacking in some aspects. I feel you don't really know or understand where they are coming from. I mean, you get an idea, but I don't feel like you completely understand anyone's kind of real point of view in this movie, because I feel it only kind of gives you half the picture. For example, I mean, these aquatic creatures are clearly quite intelligent. You know, we see them have made jewellery and stuff like that. But they're always kind of shown as kind of rampaging monsters until we kind of like really, you know, until a particular scene. But I don't know, it just felt like there should have been a little bit more to them built up throughout the movie. Obviously we have our kind of our pet character, shall we say, who we get a little bit more interaction with, but nonetheless it's just a little bit lacking in certain areas and certain development of the characters and the human characters as well. You never really exactly are on board with them, because you never really understand the reasons for why they do certain things or why they're there, for example. But anyway, on the surface of it though, it's a very engrossing film. I feel it's a professionally made piece that really does kind of capture your interest, and obviously you kind of want to find out what happens. I think ultimately it is relatively predictable in regards to where the actual story kind of goes, but nonetheless you can't help being swept up on the tide and taken for a fantastical ride. So I enjoyed this movie quite a bit, and like I said, it really is a very well put together film. I feel it's, you know, it doesn't feel like hokey or kind of low budget in any aspects. For the director does a good job of really kind of making quite a slick movie. I wasn't a huge fan of The Crucifixion, so I'm glad to see this is a bit of a step up from that movie. So I'd say I enjoyed this one quite a bit. Like I've said, it's not really a horror film. We do have creature effects, but it's never really treated us in kind of like creepy or kind of jump scares and stuff like that. It ends up being more of an action film than anything else. Although I feel people will watch this because it sounds like a horror film and you kind of read the blurb and everything. Overall, I'll give this movie a 7 out of 10. I thought it was just quite a strong film. I would definitely probably recommend it. So let me know what you think if you have seen it, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.